Everyone, this tutorial is going to cover how to add new animations to the character in Unity and how to use the new animations that I've added in your project. So let's take a look at Sphere-Man. Sphere-Man, he is a player, number one, with all his controllers. We don't really have to worry about that for this. Inside player, he is Sphere-Man with an animator root, and this is what we're going to be dealing with right here. And we're going to be adding animations to this Sphere-Man controller. But before we can do that, we've exported some animations from 3D Max into our folder here. So I've added a whole bunch, right? We did our idle from our other one. We're not actually going to need that one. But I've added some climbing animations and things like that. So before we can add them to the character, we're going to have to do a little bit of setup. So let's take a look at the regular Sphere-Man and just look at his rig. So he is set up to be a generic rig. And because he is the root character, he is making an avatar from this model. An avatar is basically like an assignment of what each bone does and how it kind of affects the character. He has animations imported, but that's just so he gets an animator on his root. If we look at any of the animations that are already currently in the game, like if we look at run, his rig is also set to generic, but his avatar is not create from model, it's copy from other avatar, and this is what you're going to have to set up for your new animation. So let's take a look at my new one here for climb. I'm going to have to switch this to copy from another avatar. I'm going to have to go into my project, find Sphere-Man, expand him, and go all the way to the bottom. There's this little punching dummy avatar looking thing. I'm just going to drag that in here and hit apply. And what this does is it basically ensures that all my animations are working off of the same base controller, so that means they'll all work the same, they're all assigned to the same bones, and all that. He's a simple rig, so it's not an overly complicated thing, but there is definitely scenarios in your game development life that you will have to make sure that the avatars are all the same and make it nice and easy for you. So number one. Number two is let's go to animations of my new animation. If you name your animations like this, it will actually add the animation in here, which will be great. And you're going to have to decide, the only thing you're going to have to decide after that is what type of animation is it. So if we take a look at some of the animations I have in here, let's say my falling animation, it does this. Now it's looping in here because it's just like a loop cycle, but in the actual game I don't want it to loop. I want it to play once, and I want it to stay in this falling pose at the end until my character lands. If it was set to loop when he got to this frame in the animation while he was falling, if he was falling for like 10 seconds, he would quickly snap back with his hands down and keep going up, like down and up, down and up, which is not something that I want. So those ones aren't set to loop. But other animations like the idle, where I do want him to, oh, this is my idle? That's crazy. I don't think I finished an idle. Let's say my my run animation, I want that to set to be loop because I want it to just keep going forever. I don't want to have to trigger through code every time the animation ends. So that's your big decision at this point here. So let's say, for instance, I have my climb animation, which is him climbing on a little whatever thing on the ceiling. I do want it to loop, right? Because when the team sets it to do this animation, I want it to just keep looping this until it's finished. So I'm going to set loop time. Loop pose will ensure that your first and last keyframes are the same. I usually make sure that I do that in 3D Max, but if I'm ever worried that the loop pose may be different, I'll do that and hit apply, and it'll kind of clean that up. Now, some animations may be a little bit complex, and by default Unity tries to optimize your animations to reduce memory and performance, so it does an animation compression, which may do some things that you don't want. You can always turn that off and hit apply and see if that affects your animation. Mine's doing some weird stuff with this hand. This animation does not look like the way I intended it to, so I will have to look at that later. Let's take a look at climb 2. For some reason, no animation was brought in this, so I'm going to have to make sure I export that again. So if you ever get this, it just means you didn't actually select the bones, or something was not selected in your Unity or in your 3D Max file, and animations did not come over. So you're going to have to go back into Max, select, climb 2, or no, climb up, climb 2. All right, let's take a look at climb 2. I believe it is 30 seconds, yeah. Right, there we go. Now I'll just do export. Climb 2, animations on. Go back into Unity. And if we go into animation, now we have an animation under Climb 2 called Climb 2. Fingers aren't bending. Yeah, something weird is going on with my fella here. I'm gonna have to take a look at what's going on. Maybe my avatar needs to get re-exported because maybe I changed up some animations. So let's say, oh, okay, I'll create from this model, copy. Yeah, something weird is definitely happening. You see my fingers are not bending here. Definitely not something that I want because it looks ridiculous. So I'm gonna have to do some research as to why that's not being exported. Maybe some of my bones don't have keyframes on them and it's doing some crazy stuff. Yeah, so I'm gonna have to look into that. But anyways, once you have your animation set up and you expand your animation, you will have a animation clip in here, which is this guy here. Now to add that to your dude, let's click on Sphere Man, open up his animation controller. We just double click it here, and we get this animation tree, and this is basically how animations are all linked up together. So the orange one is the default animation, so my default is the idle. So he is just doing his thing, doing his idle when he's not moving. And then under parameters here, we have various different parameters. So if I want him to jump, we can take a look at the arrow going from idle to jump. And what that means is through code, I have to set grounded to false, and his y velocity needs to be faster than 0.05. So you can feed in speed and distance and all this stuff into the animator, and you know, to run through all that kind of stuff. Same with run here. And all that. These little animation clips have some variables that you can change too, like you can change the speed of your animations, you can mirror them, you can even cycle and offset and do all that. If you want to add a new animation, let's say we wanted to add this, let's see here, what is it, climb 2. I could add a climb in here. And I could decide either what states he may be coming out of from climb, if I want to like really figure it out. Or I could just do this nice little any state that they have now. Right click, do make transition, drag it into my climb. And in here, by default, I have no conditions, so I can't ever set this climb animation. But in here, I could set some variables by clicking this little plus sign. I could decide to do a float, an integer, a bool, or a trigger. Floats are great for speed and things like that. Same with integers if you want to just kind of clamp your stuff. Bools are obviously great, but the problem with bools is you have to turn things on and off. So it's good for things like grounded when he's changing states. But if you just want to play an animation at a given time, trigger is really nice because when you trigger something, you don't ever have to turn it off. You can decide when it turns off, which may be good or bad. Maybe climb is not the best one for this. So you may have to figure out some better ways of doing that. So let's do climb. In here, we will select our climb condition. And that's it. So now when we go into our scene and we hit play, yeah, my idle got messed up for some reason. So we go into here and we open up our animator. Let's find Sphere Man, pop this open. I'm just gonna have this over here, and I click on climb. He's gonna start doing his climb. Because it's a trigger and there's no out state from this, it's gonna stay in climb forever. So that's the nice thing about bools is you can then set false. So if I did this as a bool, for instance, climb 2, and I set this as climb 2 to true, and then if I go back to my animator, and then I set this to make transition back to idle, and I set this to climb 2 equals false. Then in here, if I do climb 2, he will do that. I'm not sure why he's doing that. I'll have to double check. And if I change it to false, he'll go back to his idle. And that's pretty much it. So I'll have this this animator set up for you, and you'll be able to flick all this stuff on and off. Just take a look at these parameters, try and understand, what animation does what, and all that. So I'm obviously having some crazy animation issues with this one here. So I will try and figure out what is going on, but I'll make sure I give you guys a working character. And that's pretty much it. So hopefully that's a good little crash tutorial for how to import animations and use them in Max. Thanks, guys.